Hi, welcome to Texas Lone Wolf Mega, your source for red pill truth. Today we're going to talk about the, excuse me, the females in the work industry, adult entertainment industry. They go by escort or some other name, fancy name like strippers, or most of them call them sex workers. All right. They sell their bodies to make money. You know what I'm talking about. So, anyway, that's what they do right there. They do that. And, anyways, we're going to get down to the, we're just going to go ahead and get into this, okay? All right, I'm back. So, being a sex worker has negative drawbacks. Last summer I got married. I wore a white lace dress, domed flower crown, held a bouquet. I was a picture of a traditional bride. For my half-sleeve tattoo and my provocative history. Well, you know what provocative history is. Used to be an escort or sex worker, or somebody to sell their bodies to make money. Anyway, before my husband and I met, I worked on and off as a stripper through college. Then as a call girl on Craigslist for a brief stint when I was in my grad school, 2007. I quit sex work for good to become an elementary school teacher. Now listen, when you go work in the adult entertainment industry, your past can catch up. It can mean a difference in promotion. You might be relieved from work in a at-will state in the union. There's not a right to work state, but at-will state. That means the employee or employer can terminate employment with or without reason, with or without condition, with or without cause, for any reason deemed necessary. You can look at a GM and cut the cheese and they'll say you're fired. There's nothing you can do about it, okay? Anyways, 2007, I quit sex work for good to become an elementary school teacher. Then in 2010, I lost my teaching career after a New York Post put me on blast for writing and sharing stories about my sex work past. So when you work in this field, you are never safe. And some of these media outlets, they'll do anything to make a buck. Even publishing stories about your life so other people can, they're getting paid to do this. But they ruined this one woman's life, okay? In other words, like many potential partners, you'll meet some with an online bookstore or at a bar. I've got some baggage. All right? Aside from losing my career in traumatic fashion, dating was one of the toughest parts of being someone with sex work experience. So, you see, your past does matter. Okay? Okay, I don't care what anyone would say, but your past does matter. The woman's past matters. Okay. Let's cut out the fat out of the meat, okay? Let's take a good look at this. Are you ready? So let's just say that you went to work at one place, maybe 3 months here, you quit. 3 months over there, you quit. Employer's going to look at you and look at your record. they're not going to consider you for a promotion. I just found that out the hard way when I was younger. When I was younger, actually, I did that. As I grew older, that's a no-go. All right, are you ready? Whether you're a dancer, escort, porn star, or a cam girl, the question arises: how and when to tell the person you're dating, and then how to manage their reaction if they always have one. Do prostitutes really date and marry? Is the actual question some men ask. Okay, some men think it right ought to be no. I mean, look, they have options, okay? Whether experience in the industry is positive, negative, or frequently are neutral. Many people plant all sex workers with the same broad brush. They're morally corrupt or so emotionally, even physically damaged by their experience as to be undateable. So with that being said, this is from the former sex worker. This story is from her, all right? Regardless of occupation, not everyone wants a committed monogamous relationship. I always did, even before high school. When I met and started dating a man I nearly married, I knew I wanted that kind of normal family I never had growing up. My father was never very emotionally present to begin with. Left our family as soon as I turned 18. I haven't seen him since. When it came to a relationship, I was looking for the opposite of what my parents had: commitment, stability, and love. In some way, I found that my first boyfriend, first time Dave and I went out, he brought me a carnation from the supermarket where I work as a bag boy. We actually went out. Not to the Wooden Make Out, but to Burger King where he paid for my meal. All right. After my first day, he kissed me politely on my doorstep. Had a strange sensation of being filmed, as if our actors were both following the script of a pleasant movie. I've been looking for a guy who could look my mother in the eye. Then a year later, I started working as a stripper to pay for college. This somewhat impulsive decision, my dream of normalcy, never felt forever compromised. To protect myself from stigma, I kept my job secret from nearly everyone, including Dave. Then I eventually told him years later, after begging for his mercy. He forgave me for lying. Okay, men will not. He forgave you for lying, but some men will just take it as a deal breaker when you go lie to him. Okay? The more years went by, we got engaged. Still, situation lay silent between us. I knew that deep down he was still angry. We were both confused. And I was ashamed. Eventually, I called the engagement off. Basically, broke up. For the next 5 or so years, I avoided intimacy. I met men professionally. That's more or less it. As a call girl on Craigslist, I sold GFE, or the girlfriend experience, for the right price. I played a part of a partner's minus the commitment or responsibility. Similarly, besides getting paid, I got many of the benefits of a boyfriend: compliment, sex, someone to talk to, minus emotional risk. You see, girls, if you go out and you lie to a man, it's going to be very hard for him to trust you. Earlier in the story, she said she called the engagement off. She broke up with him. Or he broke up with her. And remember, if you live a lie, it will come back and bite you. Okay? It will come back and bite you. Okay? Now, relationships can be risky for anyone, especially for current and former sex workers. According to the report of the Sex Worker Education Advocacy Task Force, The criminalized, stigmatized nature of the industry makes sex workers particularly vulnerable to intimate partners' violence. Even worse, the report found some sex workers internalize the stigma of their profession, view themselves as deserving of punishment and abuse from their partners. Is it really worth it? I mean, yeah, the pay is great. The pay is great, but is it worth it? Ask yourself. So ask yourself that question. I was one of these women almost 10 years ago when I first stopped drinking and was getting out of the sex industry. I fell into a relationship with a man who made me feel ashamed of my then recent past. Mike had plenty of baggage of his own, beginning and ending with an unshakable drug habit. Don't ask, no tell was our policy. The result, tiptoeing around his drug use and my experience with sex work, our intimacy suffered. My past became a weapon he used against me when we argued. He insinuated no one else would want to date me because of it. Like many other women in abusive situations, I believed him. Listen, go work in any sex work in this industry or the adult entertainment. You have a lot to lose and nothing to gain. And some of these well-known media outlets like New York Post, they got to make money, so they got to publish stories. And they come across you or your video, and they see you in real life, they'll do a story on you, and boom, it's gone. All right. It took 6 years. Eventually, I found the courage to leave that relationship and taught me that I don't have a problem with what you used to do for money. I don't ever talk about it. It wasn't good enough for me. Then I started dating online, and I knew I wanted to discuss my sex work past and everything else with anyone I got serious with. By the time I appeared on the cover of the New York Post, lost my teaching career, established a new one as a writer. I knew the scandal compounded the fact that I wrote openly about my personal life would be so much for some men. In most cases, I saved big reveal for the fourth date. More than once, I explained it took the worry washed over my date's face. The good guys who conflated sex work, sex trafficking, who assumed sex work to be tantamount to abuse, felt sorry for me. Almost invariably, they concluded I must see the psychological issues that meant our relationship would never become serious. Maybe they feel sorry for themselves. I don't know. Realized they weren't going to get laid if they didn't want to take the relationship further. Well, I don't know. I don't know. Anyways, at least one day the opposite happened. The guy obviously titillated on drooling details like stumble up for a living, breathing character out of a penthouse form letter of the month. I'm not ashamed of my past. I'm not necessarily proud of it either. I'm not looking for someone else to use it, objectify me. What had been a pleasant evening, getting to know one another, turned into invasive, uncomfortable questions and answer. Instead of inviting him up at the end of the day, I could tell he was expecting I sent him on his way. You can never win or lose on this. One word of advice to men who find themselves in a situation of dating a sex worker: don't expect to get critique, disobeyed. Sorry to disappoint. Sex work doesn't make you sex crazy. It doesn't mean you are necessarily adventurous in bed. I'm fairly conservative in my preference. Some men have been surprised to discover I have boundaries just like anyone else. Okay, that sounds fair. That sounds fair. Another recommendation of those who are romantically interested in someone working in the sex industry or in the process of leaving it: do not pressure them to quit. Not everyone wants to quit. Even if they do, transition out of sex work can be difficult. If you're dating a sex worker, ask whether how you should talk about their occupation with others. Sex workers continue to face discrimination in all areas of life. Not sharing information about with your partner's occupation without their explicit consent can harm them. Ask what their preferences are, then respect them. So, after many bad days, I grew somewhat intolerant of men with their opinions about my former occupation. By the time I met Aaron, my attitude was a professional partner shouldn't have any feelings about all my former occupation or the fact I wrote about it. If he did, too bad. Suck it up, I thought. Keep it to yourself. And anyways, he Googled her and found out she did that work. All right? He Googled her. And he found out what she did. He stayed quiet on the subject of sex work until she brought it up. It made clear what she was looking for in a relationship: respect, commitment, and honesty. He made it clear he was wanting the same thing. Mm. Can they pair bond? I don't know. Mm. We had great conversations, similar interests. We worked in similar fields. Our sexual chemistry was intense. When I finally worked up the courage to broach the topic of my former temptation, he put me at ease. He told me something equally personal about him, even playing field. Then the conversation moved on. Okay? My past, he understood, was part of the package of dating me. On the issue of work, he was more or less neutral before we met. He leaned toward a progressive position that whatever the person wanted to do with their body was their choice. He also understood that when it comes to sex work, that choice could be complicated. Well, he's right, but he's also a cuck. Most importantly, he came to the conversation of abundant awareness of all he didn't know. He let me be the expert at the same time. He didn't demand that I educate him. From my relationship with Aaron, I also learned expecting a guy not to have any feelings about my past was unrealistic. Guys could have feelings, of course he could. We could even work through some of them together. Ultimately, it was his responsibility to deal with those feelings, not take them out on me. So, with Aaron, I felt explore my feelings, share my story without fear of being shamed or pressure to disclose more. Unlike past partners, he doesn't make his hang-ups my problem. I realize too, men who date and marry sex workers also face shaming from others. They are considered foolish for dating someone who wrongly assumed to be incapable of monogamy. They're called Captain Save a 304, Beta, or Cut. I used that term earlier, right? To name a few, insult guys are perceived to be incapable of sticking up for themselves. But Aaron and I worked through our fears and insecurities together. In the beginning, we talked ad nauseum about how our past experience affected our present day preference, where some of my triggers came from, as well as issues related to disclosure. One of our more memorable fights, for example, was after I adversely saw a text Aaron sent to a friend I was supposed to meet up for the first time the following day, warning this guy about my former life. Now, the fact that I write all adds a new layer of complication. Aaron believes me to be an expert in my own experience. Still, I write about things for us. He doesn't always agree with my portrayal. But ultimately, we both open talking through differences, no matter how difficult the conversations might be. 3 years, my former occupations sometimes come up. Something will remind me of the night I earned 1,000 or less than an hour's work or of a time. I felt strange, unsafe on the job. I find myself talking about it, and we would be walking through the West Village. I'll casually point to a townhouse and mention a man I met there who had an ED and a television scene featuring SEX work would come on. I'd launch into the diatribe on how inaccurate it was. Aaron's negative, or rather negative. Still, sometimes I sense his anger when I bring up someone who hurt me on other occasion. He'll admit to feeling insecure or jealous about my positive work experience. The feelings don't lead him on to lash at me or respect me any less. They're just part of our relationship as two people with our own separate past who choose to come together, share our lives with each other. In fact, my husband has an open mind doesn't make him a cut. It makes him a decent human being with an awesome wife who happens to have worked in the sex industry. All right. Now, I'm just scrolling down. Now, I'm going to tell you something. You go work in this sex industry, a sex worker. All right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read this. Having trouble finding a partner as a sex worker. Okay. Hey guys, I need to rant a bit. I'm a sex worker. Genuinely love what I do. I've had the fact on Tinder and Bumble. Just a warning, just in case it's a deal breaker, which is fine. I respect some men are just not okay with their partner being a worker. That's why I add that in my bio. And when I match with people, everything turns sexual so quick, and I'm over it. I had to block these last three guys for overstepping boundaries with me because they think I'm easy since I'm a SW. Anyone have any advice? Now we're going to go read some comments here and see what other people got to say. I think you have a hard time being taken serious by people who know up front about it. Half the people will skip because they think you want to advertise your OF OnlyFans. Other half will treat you only as a sex worker, either from a client perspective or one shaming you. This is a result of being a worker like that, okay? Probably you could try to remove it from your profile on Tinder and mention it afterwards. But before hooking up, otherwise he might feel like you tricked him. The approach mean you turn down a lot after telling. I don't think there's no way around it. Many people aren't comfortable with what you do. But yeah, if that don't work out, I'm not trying to sound rude. Maybe wait until you're not a sex worker anymore to find a relationship. That's probably what your plan it was when you found one. And I get that, but you want get a decent guy if you're a sex worker. Again, I'm not trying to sound rude. Don't mind you being a sex worker, but just weird to picture your girl selling her nudes to dudes on the internet, you know? Unless you find someone who has a fetish for that kind of thing. It's a good guy. Anyways, hope you find your love. Alright. This one here makes more sense. Yeah, honestly, I stand incorrected. I didn't know that there's much dating seen in sex work. I was just going by what I know and the advice I got from others. People have educated more and they seem to have happy relationship. It doesn't change my personal stance on dating. At least at least I know a little bit better. Now, seriously, I'm a sex worker. I have a partner. Sex worker allowed to have partners. So picture sharing yourself with multiple random workers. Okay? And then you go to your partner. Do you pass the STI or STD on to them? It ain't gonna work. Okay? Of course, they can have partners. It's not about controlling either. Men used to avoid sex workers or break up with them so they become sex workers rather than change them, which is fine, by the way. I know your relationship is different. Majority of men won't date a sex worker. It doesn't matter if you're not doing it 24/7. You're still doing it, and that I don't care what a woman does with her body unless I'm in a committed relationship with her. I don't hate y'all, but I wouldn't date y'all either. So now this one here said, I do understand it's a deal breaker for some people. That's fine. I wouldn't say most men though. I don't think men are insecure. Okay. All right. Now I'm gonna post this here in the description tab, and you cannot hide your past. Okay, you cannot hide your past because it will catch up with you. I'm gonna pin these. I'm gonna pin these things here. I'm gonna pin them onto the description box, and I'm gonna upload it. Okay. Thank you for listening to me, and this is a 30-minute clip. All right. And I want to tell y'all, thank you very much for listening to me on this. I want to say peace out.